So I thought I would talk a little bit about the Platform Sutra, which is where we get our information about Huineng that I talked about last time. And it's interesting to me because I've not known much about the Platform Sutra. I'm going to move so you can see the flowers. There they are. So um, I never, honestly, I'd never read the Platform Sutra before. I'd heard the stories. Um, and so I really didn't know anything about it. And I must say that what I have to talk about today is absolutely not an exhaustive analysis of the contents of the Platform Sutra. And so it's just some high points that I thought might be interesting for us to consider. For one thing, the Platform Sutra, of course, is different from any of the other documents that we commonly call sutras, which are thought to be the words of the Buddha transmitted for several hundred years in the oral form and then written down in the first century before the common era and written in Sanskrit. So this one is called a sutra. I'm not, and it's not clear why. Perhaps because it purports to be the words of the sixth patriarch, Huineng. But and there's a tremendous amount of scholarship about the Platform Sutra and agreements and disagreements about translations of words and what is authentic and what isn't authentic. But in any case, what's been transmitted down to us at this point, which is, if translations of translations, seems to be kind of a compilation of ostensibly autobiographical episodes in Huineng's life that he tells these stories about himself, some of the stories that I mentioned last time, and also talks that he gave to monks and lay people. And so I thought we could look at some of these aspects to consider how they might apply in our life in 21st century American Zen. Chinese society was highly stratified, with status, intellect, and learning being highly valued. But we know at the beginning of his discipleship, as we talked about last time, had none of these characteristics. He was of low economic status, and he was uneducated. He was illiterate. But his understanding was profound, and it was that which was most important to his teacher, above status and learning. Anyone, because Buddha nature does not discriminate, can be a follower of the Buddha and can realize his or her own Buddha nature, as Huineng did, apparently instinctively, having heard an unknown quote from the Diamond Sutra. And this point in the story that carries forward from the practice of the Buddha, who did not discriminate among castes, including those of the lowest strata of life. He allowed everyone to be his follower. And it's interesting to consider that the same radical inclusiveness needs to be restated in varying cultures. Even asking the Japanese question, does a dog have Buddha nature, implies the same point in part. Even dogs. In our society, where we hold an egalitarian ideal, the vast majority of American Buddhists are white, middle-class, educated people. We follow the de facto segregation and stratification of contemporary American life, whether we like it or not. And are we able to make those who don't fit this mode welcome? It's a question that we have to challenge ourselves with. When we say everyone is welcome, is that really true? And what limitations are there? Most scholars see the Platform Sutra as not having been written by Huineng. After all, he was illiterate, and there's nothing said about his having required literacy, even after he became the sixth patriarch. As I mentioned last week, the historical accuracy of the biographical material is unknown. And it's thought that later authors compiled the stories and the teachings to help establish the continuity and validity of Zen teaching as distinct from other schools of Buddhist practice in China at the time. So I've tried to tease out some of the important points from the stories and teachings that might have relevance for us. One major point is the necessity of individual effort and understanding. I was struck in the story about if you remember this, the poems that were devised by the head monk and by Huineng, that when his teacher Hongren asked the students to produce a poem, there's an implication that apart from meditation, the monks appeared to have had little or no instruction from their teacher. To a large degree, they were expected to have found their way to realization on their own. Hongren even seems somewhat exasperated with their lack of understanding, that they knew how to read and parse language in sutras and recite sutras and so forth, but they hadn't, through that approach, reached true understanding of Buddha nature and their own Buddha nature. And even in our contemporary practice, there's a tension between valuing studying and learning and recognizing that each of us must find our own way to realization. That we depend on Sangha and we depend on teaching, but we have to find our way to the deepest understanding on our own. Study and learning can point the way, but they are not the way. Each of us finds it uniquely. Huineng himself attained profound realization without the benefit of almost any instruction at all, perhaps none. That's the implication of the story. So it's available to anyone, but the way is hidden in each unique individual experience. And I think this is true for each of us. Another important theme in the Platform Sutra is the primacy of prajnaparamita, the wisdom of emptiness that we honor in the Heart Sutra that we chant every Sunday, which also carries forward Bodhidharma's understanding of no merit and the necessity of non-attachment, pushing aside any notion of gain or attainment. The realization of emptiness is wordless and belies all sense of achievement. And that's really hard for contemporary Americans because we're so achievement oriented, with all of our study and professionalism and advanced degrees and so forth. And we think if we just read enough books and listen to enough Dharma talks, we'll get it. So prajnaparamita is without thought, but at the same time to refrain from thinking of anything so that all thoughts are suppressed is an erroneous view. There's a sense of not this, not that, or you can't get there from here. And without an explicit map, we're tempted to give up. I think we can't find our way. And Huineng suggests that just following monastic practices of renunciation and conformity is not enough without some deep inner practice. And that such practice is not confined to the monastery. Now that's a good thing for us. Sometimes it seems as though it's the monastic path that is the true path, and it's that this is sometimes taught in some Buddhist lineages, but not in Zen, at least not in American Zen. The sutra also talks about taking refuge, and taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in the form of a teaching on the three bodies. It's called the three bodies. And they don't use, or kayas, that's the Sanskrit word for body, kaya, K-A-Y-A. And the three bodies are the Dharmakaya, which is Buddha nature, the transformation body, which we call Sambhogakaya, which are the teachings, and the material body, the Nirmanakaya, which is us, our body. And Huineng in the sutra instructs us to take refuge there and not to look outside of ourselves for enlightenment. So you can't take an SAT in enlightenment. You can answer all the questions right and not understand. And that's hard for us because we so very much want to understand. But this kind of understanding is not learned from a book. We carry the three bodies within ourselves. Our material body holds the teachings and Buddha nature all in one. Buddha nature communicates itself through the teachings. So the Dharmakaya, which is Buddha nature, communicates itself through the teachings, which is Sambhogakaya, the transformation from emptiness to form, you could say, and to the material body, to our own bodies, all of our skandhas that we talk about in the Heart Sutra, and everything else that's listed in the Heart Sutra. But it's up to each one of us to see and enact this in our lives. And then by doing so, we actually feed back into and develop the understanding of the teachings and our access to the ultimate. So it's a dynamic process, constantly moving and evolving. And this is nothing but Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in our own self. And it's thus that Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are our refuge. Also, we now taught in the Platform Sutra what are classically called the Bodhisattva vows, and I'll read you. This is Red Pine's translation of the Bodhisattva vows. I vow to save all beings, no matter how numberless. I vow to end all afflictions, no matter how countless. I vow to master all teachings, no matter how limitless. I vow to attain Buddhahood, no matter how transcendent. So these teachings put the evolving Chan in Chinese, Zen in Japanese tradition squarely in the Mahayana, where the emphasis is on not just personal enlightenment, but the concurrent enlightenment of all beings, of everyone else. And then this is Red Pine's commentary on that. By vowing to save all beings, we create the same realization body created by all Buddhas. By vowing to end all afflictions, we end our attachment to our material body, just as all Buddhas have freed themselves of theirs. By vowing to master all teachings, we produce the transformation body, just as all Buddhas have done in their effort to transmit this teaching to others. And by vowing to attain Buddhahood, we end our separation from our Dharma body, which is the original nature of all beings, not only of Buddhas. And of course, you can see that this is a teaching of emptiness in which we all live. And then he talks about the 10,000 dharmas, and you remember Dogen's teaching of to follow the way of Buddha is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be illumined by the myriad dharmas, or the 10,000 things. In other words, to be illumined by everything in existence at all times. And the 10,000 dharmas are our nature. So the Dharmakaya includes the 10,000 dharmas. And 10,000 implies an infinite number, of course. Our nature is conclusive of all things. And the thingness of existence is created by our mind, which divides up limitless emptiness into named things, the 10,000 dharmas. And thus the 10,000 dharmas are our nature. It's a very profound teaching. So, and then here's a little discussion of, I think this is probably another commentary by Red Pine. And if you're not familiar with Red Pine is a wonderful translator and commentarian on several of the Chinese sutras. So, and then shunyata is the word, the Sanskrit word for emptiness. And he says, I suppose every teacher and every student has their own map for sailing through the straits of shunyata. I like to look at it this way. Emptiness appears to be a negation, and it is, but it's a double negation. It's a negation of a negation. The negation that it negates is the assertion of self-existence. When we assert the existence of something, whether in time or space or in our minds, we separate it from reality. We confer on its self-existence, which is a delusion. And he's talking about no self here. But self-existence only exists in our minds. Its true nature is its oneness with reality. So he says all the teachings of all the Buddhas are present within us because all Buddhas and all teachings arise from the very nature that we all share. I think I could go on, and I'm tempted to go on and on. But the subsequent teachings are highly technical and detailed. And so I think, they sort of express this quality that we have, is if we put enough words around something, we will know its reality. And of course that doesn't happen. But overall, Li Neng's teaching is beyond the confines of mere formality. And although he advocates specific practices, including foremost meditation and the precepts, he emphasizes their formless nature as being expressions of emptiness, defined and categorized by our own mind, which is both full and empty. And so that's really what I had to say about the Platform Sutra.